use of force is necessary, you need to comply with the police officer, the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of the police officer. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is April 20th, 2016, which means it is 420. So what's up to all my 420 people out there having rallies and out there smoking? I know in New Hampshire, they're actually smoking in front of the State House, and usually they even get some of the state reps to join them, and that's actually being broadcast live. I don't know if they're still out there now, but it was being broadcast live at shiredude.com. Shire Dude, of course, comes on the show from time to time and guest co-hosts, but he was broadcasting that live. So whether it's still on live or it is over, you should be able to watch it on his channel. So I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and we are broadcasting live from Las Vegas. Thank you for listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights, Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, and promote the ideas. Oh, and you can listen live on Spreaker.com and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com and to the archives immediately following the show on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, and SoundCloud, and the next day on Stitcher. On Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty and self-ownership, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom. Exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. And we are happy to hear from you. You can call in at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. We had some issues initially. It looks like everything is fine now. So at the beginning of the show, it was connecting in and out. So I don't know if anything was missed, but I restarted the show and hopefully everything got picked up. So I haven't had a lot of problems with Spreaker, which is another thing I like about it. When I was on Blog Talk Radio, and anybody who's still listening from the Blog Talk Radio's days, as I had mentioned, this is the week of our 2-year anniversary. So anybody who's been listening since the Blog Talk Radio days knows that we had days where it would just disconnect us, where I had to go to the phone from the computer because of the connection with the computer. And it wasn't a issue with my internet connection or anything like that, because I had ended up buying a new modem. And I wonder if the modem I have, it probably still works. I should probably hook it up and have 2 modems going. But we had a lot of issues with Blog Talk Radio. Although the functionality of the site was great, it was just the connectivity along with the sound quality. If you go back and listen to any show that was done on Blog Talk Radio before we moved over to Spreaker that was recorded. Now, there were shows that I was still on Blog Talk Radio and I was recording shows on my H4N, my Zoom H4N, and then uploading those. And those were good, but anything that was actually recorded through Blog Talk Radio and broadcasted live, the sound quality compared to what it is now, there's just no comparison. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. I saw recently someone in Las Vegas who is on my friends list. I don't know them personally, but they are still using Blog Talk Radio, and I went and just, for the hell of it, checked out their show, and the sound quality is terrible. It's once you go to a certain quality of sound, it's like you can't go back. It's hard to, I mean, I can listen to it, but it's just, you really notice it. It's very evident. But anyway, you can also contact us via Skype, username Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and just send us a contact request, your name and what you want to talk about. And check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, which links to our Facebook and all our social media pages. Be sure to like us on all of our Facebook pages, the main one being Nonpartisan Liberty for All, but there are a few others, such as End the Government Police and our network page, as well as Twitter and Tumblr. So go to nonpartisanlibertyforall.com and check us out there. And you also find other stuff, contact information, pictures, and most of the show archives are there, usually posted after the weekend. So this week we started talking about parenting yesterday, and more of a freedom-oriented parenting. We compared it with helicopter parenting. So just to give a recap of what we covered yesterday, because this whole week we are covering parenting and the different aspects. And really, the question and the goal of covering parenting, the whole point being, is, will parenting in a certain way, a more freedom-oriented way, lead to more freedom? Because obviously the government realizes this, and they are trying to indoctrinate kids as much as they can from every direction. So I'm not saying to indoctrinate kids. I'm saying give kids their freedom, let them be who they are, and let them know that they own themselves, as opposed to the government who's lying and trying to indoctrinate kids. So tonight we're going to talk about what type of parenting is the most freedom-oriented, or what is the best form of freedom-oriented parenting, I guess, and will that actually even lead to freedom? So before I got off the air last night, I had asked the question, well, let's say everybody does start bringing their kids up in a freedom-oriented manner with a philosophy, a parenting philosophy of freedom, and actually giving their kids freedom, treating them like human beings, letting them know that they own themselves like they should. And will that actually lead to them in the future supporting freedom, or is it something that they would rebel against or just ignore? See, unlike what the government does, which is indoctrination, lies, and those type of things, what I'm talking about is actually giving people their rights, giving kids their rights that they were born with, and giving them the ability to exercise those rights. So that's a far cry between trying to brainwash and indoctrinate somebody into your ideas. I wouldn't, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, as tomorrow we'll have a guest host, Katie Reyes will join us, who is also our official voiceover girl, and we'll talk about our backgrounds as far as our childhood and experience with being parented, as well as our philosophy on parenting, although neither of us have kids, but as far as future kids and what our philosophy is on that. But I wouldn't force it the same way I wouldn't force ideas of indoctrination. I wouldn't force my ideas of freedom neither. I would tell facts. I would give them the opportunity to make their own decisions and make up their own mind about things and question everything, even what I say, and come to that conclusion on their own. But I believe that most kids would come to that conclusion because it's based on facts and it's based on true freedom and having that freedom, unless they just want to be a slave and have everything done for them and being taken care of by the government. However, that's at a price, and that price is freedom. So today we're gonna talk more about peaceful parenting and the aspects of that, as well as radical unschooling. Radical unschooling is more than just the unschooling. It's usually coupled with the parenting side as well. You can't really have one without the other. They pretty much go together. Now, this is just the way I understand it. The people that I'm basing a lot of my information off of when it comes to peaceful parenting is Stefan Molyneux, although I did go and listen to some other people. And with radical unschooling is Dana Martin, who is the best known. And if you go to YouTube, I mean, pretty much it's all put in radical unschooling, and it's pretty much all Dana Martin videos. But I found some other people as well. So I'm going more by their definition of it. Now, there are obviously variations, and you can take different things from different people and mix them together and do all of these different things philosophically, or have all these different ideas and use them in practice. It's not exactly like, okay, well, this person, this is exactly how they parent, so this means this is exactly what radical unschooling is. No, there are variations on everything, and there, of course, are people who do it a little differently. And so I just want to be clear that that's who I'm taking a lot of the ideas that I'm presenting from, that they're coming from those people, and that there are variations on it, and different people have kind of different ideas as to what it means, and different people take it further than others as well. But one thing about peaceful parenting that is not debatable, but a lot of the time it's looked at this way is, and I even thought it initially that's what it was about, because I didn't think it went far enough. And I'm still not sure if I think it goes far enough, but I know it goes further than this. I thought it was about just not being physical, not hitting or not using any violence against your kids. But it goes a lot further than that. So that's only one part of it. But we'll be talking all about that, and tomorrow should be a fun show, so make sure you turn into that, because both me and Katie, who's also my fiance, have different ideas on parenting and how we think if we have future kids, they should be parented in the future. Although we do agree on some things, we disagree on some things. And I'm very adamant about some of those things, and some of those things I'm not. So I believe, though, that it's a positive thing, because I think you should be talking about how to raise your kids before you have them. Because if you can't agree, now it depends, because you can compromise and come up with different ways to kind of meet each other halfway. But if you're to the point where you're so uncompatible when it comes to how you want to raise your kids, you might want to think about either not having kids or maybe not being with that person. These are the type of things that people don't think about. Of course, these days, many times people will get pregnant and it's not planned and it's an accident, and talking about parenting beliefs never even comes into the conversation. So, I mean, we've been together. It will be 4 years in September. So a little over 3.5 years. And of course, she has talked about her wanting to have kids from the beginning. So it's something that we obviously talk about, especially with my quote unquote radical ideas about society and government and all of these things. Well, ideas that I don't think based on the information that they're radical at all. I think really the rest of the fucking society are the ones who are radical and insane, giving money to extortionists and not calling it what it is. You know, I give them money, yes, but I give them money essentially at gunpoint, because I know that if I don't, they're going to come and kidnap me. And when I go to defend myself, I'm going to end up dead. So at least I realize what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, as opposed to people that are in total denial. So I think those are the people that are radical to just sit there and support extortionists, especially the people that are totally supportive of the government. I mean, you have people that are just like, whatever, you know, they don't have a high opinion of the government. And there's a lot of people that they don't have my views, but they just don't have a high opinion of the government in general. So you have those people. And along with those, you have the people, and in Brett Venat's great little 13-minute clip video that he had put together, what was it, The Truth About Libertarians or The Danger About Libertarians, where he talks about people, robbing you and then becoming essentially all the criminals saying, hey, we can legally rob everybody and legally run everything by just creating a government. And in that, he brings up a lot of good points, but one of them is that how all of these people will even start to defend you. So essentially that, and I've had it happen. It happened to me. It happens all the time if everywhere I went and everybody that I met, I talked to and I said, I don't believe in government, I guarantee you I would get some kind of mean and nasty reaction maybe 80% of the time. I mean, some people are just, one, scared to say anything, and two, don't want to, cause any problems. But you'd be surprised. Even with that, the last two times, one was more subtle, where I had somebody ask me about, well, who's going to build the roads? But I know what they were getting at. And then I told this story. I told that story on the air as well, but I also told this story when I went to a campaign fundraiser for a friend. And the reason I went, it was a Valentine's Day dinner. I thought it would be nice to take Katie to a Valentine's Day dinner. Katie, my fiance. And I wanted to support my friend at the same time. So it wasn't like I just donated money to her for her campaign. I went to a dinner. I got a dinner out of it. It was a nice place. They had music. They had a dance floor, a bar. And I got to take my fiance somewhere for Valentine's Day to a nice get-together. So I viewed it. It was $50 each, I believe, per ticket. So it cost me $100. And it helped my friend out at the same time. Now, I'm not going around campaigning for her. I'm not involved in her campaign. And now that she's even in my district, I'm not even voting for her because I'm not voting, period. But I don't have a problem with going to an event where I'm getting something out of it and helping her at the same time. So I went there. And I passed out. I don't even think I passed them out. The table that we were assigned to, I just put them on the table. And one of the guys looked at them. And, of course, on the back of it, I don't have one in front of me, but it says something to the effect of what I say at the beginning of the show about promoting the ideas of freedom and liberty and being able to do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt others and those type of things. I think it even goes a little further. But he, one of the guys at the table, he had kind of asked me about it, and I said that I don't believe in government. And he didn't like that too much. When you say that you don't believe in government, man, there's just some people that they're in this paradigm, they're in this mind state. They can't even be open to, okay, well, what does that mean? And they can't even explore the idea. It's just, I'm angry now. You don't believe in my government. So, of course, first, and, you know, me being me and growing up how I did, I always think about, of course, immediately I wasn't thinking about doing anything, but I always think about other people trying to do something. And I'm talking about physically, like, is this guy gonna, once I saw the anger, it's like, well, is this guy gonna try to do something? And I always, I'm cautious of that. But so he says, it was just so fucked up. Out of nowhere, after I said that, first he says, well, why are you here? And I could tell he was mad. I'm like, well, I'm friends with Annette. And Annette Tejero is running for District 3 in Nevada for House of Representatives. So I hope she wins. I mean, it's not, she's not going to make things any worse. I don't think she can make things any better. And that's not because of who she is. It's just, she's just one person, and she'd be one person in a house of 435. So, she'd be one of 435. And that's not even counting, of course, the Senate and the president. So it's not that I don't agree with her on some things, although I feel that one of the things that bothers me, and she knows this, is that I feel she won't come out, and she has to play the game of getting elected. And not that she comes out and acts fake and lies, but there's things she probably won't say that I wish she would. So, and her stance on drugs is, she's a doctor. So, not that means anything. I would think doctors, it would be the opposite. They realize how all these prescription drugs are what they are, and that what's on the street is probably a lot more dangerous, and they've probably seen a lot of things when it relates to illegal drugs. But anyway, that's a whole different story. But bottom line is, it doesn't matter. If you believe in self-ownership, then you believe that all drugs should be legal otherwise, or decriminalized, or whatever you want to call them. Basically, the government shouldn't have anything to do with them, because if you don't, then you're lying to yourself when you say that you own yourself, that you believe you own yourself. So anyway, so he said that, and I said, well, I'm friends with Annette, and I thought this would be a nice place to go for Valentine's Day to take my girlfriend. I think it was actually literally on Valentine's Day. I believe it was on a Saturday. So I wanted to go there and then, maybe do something else after. I don't remember if we did anything after. We might have stopped at a bar or something. So he says to me, and again, I've said this on the air before, but only once, that when I said I don't believe in government, that, well, what if I pulled out a 45 right now and shot you in the head? Meaning that, well, if there was no government, there'd be no police. And I'm just like, and that was my reaction. That's why I was just like, what? It just came out of nowhere. I was my mouth just kind of dropped, like, okay, you're a fucking angry motherfucker. I got a 40 caliber in the car. If you'd like, I can go get mine. So just him saying that, obviously he was angry, which he had no reason to be. And the fact is that it wouldn't do anything. I'd be dead either way. I'd either be dead or he'd be dead, because I'd get that thing out of his hand and I'd beat him with it or shoot him with it. So it was just an asinine statement. But the point was, he was mad and he made a, crazy fucking statement. And this guy, it's not like this guy was a kid, or he must have been, Jesus, like late 50s, and he was there with his wife, and he's a professional type guy, I would assume. He's a Republican. And these are the type of, this is the way these people act. It's crazy. I wouldn't say to somebody, just because they said, they love government, that, I wouldn't get mad and make a similar, I don't know how I'd make a similar analogy. But the difference too is that I've heard all of that. When somebody says, what about the roads? When somebody says, what about this? What about the police? What about all of these things? I've heard it a million fucking times already. That's the difference. So and he didn't make an argument really. He just said, well, what would happen? And basically there wouldn't be any difference. But people fail to realize that society itself would be totally different, where there'd be security companies, or people would be responsible for their own protection, or there would be militias or groups that got together, or there's so many different ways to do things. And I don't have all the answers. And when they wrote the fucking Constitution, they didn't have all the answers neither. So, to say that this is another thing that they'll do, is I'm expected to know every little thing and every little detail if the government was to go away. I'm supposed to know how everything is supposed to work in every little detail, even though when the Constitution was put into effect, they didn't have everything mapped out. They didn't have, what if you could have named 1,000 things? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if there weren't all these laws that covered all these things? And not like there needs to be all these laws to cover all these things. But it's always, well, how would this work? How would that work? How would it? Instead of, what about all the things that exist now that don't work, but they go on the way they do? But that's okay. So it's just crazy logic. But it is what it is. That's what they're going to do, because their goal is to attack anything that goes against their ideas. And frankly, it scares them, and they fucking know it, because they actually have to think about it. And the fact that the government is fucking them over, and that the government is a mafia, and that the government doesn't give a fuck about them, and the whole thing is a big illusion of freedom, that reality is scary. And they don't want to face that shit. So how do they react? They react in anger from fear. And that's just one example. So, the amount of probably, never mind the shit that I get to my face. And, that would only go so far, to be honest, because if someone's going to literally put their hands on me or try to, potentially, depending on the circumstances, could be the last thing they do. But meaning that if somebody's going to attack me, I'm going to defend myself. But never mind that, all the people that may turn the show on for a minute and criticize me or think, oh, that guy's crazy, or his ideas are crazy, and they don't even think about them. I've already done that with their ideas. And again, that's the difference, is all their ideas. I've heard it all. I'm familiar with them all. So I have more of an advantage where it's not like, oh, well, why don't you listen to our ideas and then be open-minded to that? Well, I was open-minded to it, sort of, I guess. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But, I wasn't to the point that I'm at now, but I went through all of that. I've been pretty independent since the beginning, as far as I can remember. So I am a little different than people that will say, well, I was a big conservative. Like Rob Matthias, who we had on last week, talked about being a big conservative, and now he's, whatever word you want to use, an anarchist, or I like to say believes in true freedom and liberty. I think he agrees with most of the ideas that I do, essentially. So he went from being a big conservative to that. I don't have that type of story. I've never been a member of a political party. I've never even voted. So I've always been, it's funny because he calls himself, Rob the Rebel or something like that in the Rebel Love Show. And I should have said, hey, I'm in Vegas. I've been here 15 years with the Rebels, which I'm a big fan of. You'll see me wearing Rebel shirts all the time. And you want a real rebel? No, I'm not saying that Rob's not a rebel. I'm just, he's a good guy. I'm just messing with him. But, I've always been a rebel since I was a kid, So that totally defines me. And I mean, in every sense of the word, a rebel, different and standing up and getting into fights because of it and things like that. So we'll talk about that though tomorrow. Before I get to talking about peaceful parenting, I did want to mention something because this came up this morning. I was listening to Glenn Beck, who's really the only conservative talk show host that I can listen to at all. I mean, sometimes I'll actually even listen outside the car, but I can only listen for so long to him too. Not because he annoys me or anything like that. It's just, a lot of it's the same type shit about the election and Ted Cruz, because that's their guy and their conservative values and all of that. But I think he's a good host, and he does a very professional show. And as I mentioned before, I think he comes off like he actually believes in what he's doing. Now, that doesn't mean he does, but he comes off that way, which is helpful as opposed to that fuckhead Michael Savage and that other douchebag, the Mark Levin, who just yell and are angry. And there's no entertainment value there, neither. There's no, I don't even know how to describe what you would get out of that. Now, I know you want to get information, and of course, that's the whole point of my show. But at the same time, I want to sound somewhat entertaining and in a positive mood and in something that you can listen to, and hopefully I am. And some people may think that I come off that way, and some people may think that I don't. I really don't like my voice, to be honest, and I think these shows since I've come back haven't been as good as, say, shows maybe when I first got my new equipment, to be honest. But, I continue on and continue to do my best. But how these guys are as big as they are, I do not get it. They, and this may be part of their persona on the radio, but I don't see how people are attracted to that persona as a listener. They just come off like these mean, angry, arrogant, know-it-all assholes. They really do. And I don't see, it's not entertaining. It's just, and Mark Levin will do that thing that I always do, that he'll start to talk like this, and then, you don't know the Constitution. I had a teacher like that, and we start laughing every time he did it. So he would get mad. He was this little skinny guy with a beard, right, who probably weighed like 110 pounds, literally, maybe less. And he would talk like this and then get loud. And it was like we just look at each other and start laughing. And that's kind of what Mark Levin's like. And then they start to go after Cruz. And then Trump says it's not fair. What's not fair about the Constitution? This is the fucking guy that is getting millions of listeners, and I just don't get it. I know he's written books. I actually read one of his books, which wasn't that bad, but I don't believe in the Constitution, and the whole book was about the Constitution. I thought he had a couple good points, and that was about it. And I can't even remember what those good points were at this time. But at the time, I was just reading a lot of books, and it had come out, and I was like, all right, let me check out. It was the Liberty Amendment. So I'm like, let me check out his fucking solution to everything that's going on. And it was, having a constitutional convention, and this is what he's going to rewrite and change. And the only thing I can remember was he was going to change the fact that the states used to vote in the senators instead of the people. So he was going to change that, meaning like the legislature. I don't know exactly how it worked. If the legislature, the state legislature they'd all vote, or they'd all vote and then the governor would approve it. I don't know the exact process of how the states would elect the senators, but that was originally in the Constitution. That was how senators got elected, and then they passed an amendment that reversed that, where the people voted for the senators. And I'm not sure which. I kind of lean more towards the state, I guess, voting those senators in, but I don't know. I don't think the Constitution should exist because it doesn't go far enough to protect freedoms. And the other thing is people just ignore the Ninth Amendment like it doesn't exist. The Ninth Amendment being the amendment that says just because we didn't give you the right specifically in the Constitution to do something doesn't mean you don't have that right. But anyway, on Glenn Beck this morning, they played a tape. I would assume it was a tape because it was from 1970, about where they were talking about global cooling, I guess. I didn't hear a name given to it, but how there was going to be an ice age in 20 years or something like that, and they were worried about by 1990 it would be so cold that there would be another ice age or the beginning of another ice age. I only caught part of it. And when you have something, here's my whole issue with whatever you want to call it, global warming or climate change or whatever, and you see how they keep changing the name to fit the agenda. There's an agenda behind it, and anything that has an agenda behind it that involves taxing you and taxing electricity so high that you have to live in a little small place. And it relates to Agenda 21, and I'm going to do a show in the near future about global warming and Agenda 21. I just need to do more research about global warming before I do anything on it. But no matter how much research I do, it's still going to be, well, these people said they on one side and you have the people on the other side. But I'm always going to doubt it because of the agenda that they have, the agenda of taxes and increasing taxes by a lot, making electricity unaffordable to, of course, everybody but the elite, and then using it as a way to install global government and at least global laws where the whole world has to follow, because it's not going to work if it doesn't, obviously. I'm all for the environment and having a clean environment and not polluting and things like that. I don't think any of it should be forced, but I'm for, recycling's a positive thing. You shouldn't be forced to recycle. Keeping your environment clean, not just throwing trash everywhere, trying to keep rivers and any bodies of water clean. Again, I don't think people should be forced to at the barrel of a gun, but I do support, clean air as well. All of these things. And everybody does. I don't think anybody wants pollution. But when it comes to claims of man-made global warming, where it keeps changing, whereby if you look at the past, it was going to be this, and then this was going to happen by this time. And, look at the weather. So that means that because of all this weather we've had, that's because of man-made climate change. And there may be something to that. There may be some effect. It may be a minimal effect, or it may be from the sun, which is another theory, and who knows. But with the agenda behind it, it's hard for me to take any of it seriously when your agenda is taxes and global government or global laws, and to take more control and have less sovereignty. Not that there's much anyway, but that's really their agenda. So when it comes down to that, it's not something that I even, I'm not saying that I don't believe it or I do, because I don't know. I'm not a scientist, and there's people on both sides, but I'm saying for me not to doubt, one, I'm going to question everything. And with an agenda like that, you have to question it. There's just no way not to, unless you're just ignorant. But to not question it, at the same time, to not, where they're not meeting all of their projections, which they'll say they do, because, oh, look at this happened and this happened. And I don't know. To me, it seems like that anybody can be paid off. And I think on both sides, I'm not saying it's just on one side, both sides have an agenda, and it could be somewhere in the middle. It could cause some climate change, and it may be also coupled with other reasons. But to me, there's not enough based on based on the way government works in general, is everything they lie about, and they have a hidden agenda behind it. So that's where it's hard for me to believe anything that they say. And that's where I come to, I guess, with global warming or climate change. Sorry about that. I usually am really good. You usually never hear any sounds coming from any devices, but unfortunately I did not turn my phone sound off. I've been keeping it on. I usually had my phone on vibrate all the time, and recently I've been turning it up. So I apologize for that. I keep getting the same call from the same number at the same time every night, it seems like. So I'm going to find out who's actually calling, because they never leave a message. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. That went a little longer than I had expected, but we may go a little longer tonight than planned, which it does really make it hard for me, because I get up at 5:45, and I don't just, when I end the show at 9, I don't go right to bed. It's I got to get ready for bed, and that takes me a while. And I do things that save me time in the morning, like I'll shave at night, and it will take me a while to shave, because I'll make sure I shave very closely, so not that much grows back overnight, if any. So things like that, that I will make sure I'm ready for, so I don't have to do in the morning. So when I end the show at 10, it pushes it an hour, and I don't get as much sleep. I can do it, but and I try to make sure that I also exercise before I go to sleep as well. So, but anyway, I know everybody wanted to know that. So trying to lose some weight there. Not that I'm, huge or anything, obviously, people that have seen pictures, but I weigh more than I have probably my whole life. So I like to say I'm fat for a skinny person. Just like when I talk about my show, I don't suck or I'm not terrible is my words. But anyway, We'll play a short clip or possibly a long clip. And when we come back, we'll talk about peaceful parenting, radical unschooling, and really, can this have a real effect on the future? If we can get kids out of government schools, if we can start a campaign to get, because this is something that we don't need the fucking government. All we have to do is get the people behind us, or people to take their kids out of government schools, and then to think about their parenting and how it affects their kids, and move towards a more freedom-oriented parenting philosophy. It doesn't mean you have to go to the extent that I believe neither, although I think that people should, and I believe that your probably parents in many instances are violating their kids' rights, in my opinion. Now, that might be a controversial thing to say because parents believe, hey, I can raise my kid any way I want. Now, I will say that the government, you definitely have the right over the government, especially when your kid is really little. But when you're talking about a teenager, there shouldn't even be an age of consent. And when I'm not talking about sex, I'm talking about if you're able to move out as a teenager, you should be able to, because you may be in a home where that's abusive, and what, you're going to be forced by the government into some stupid foster home when you could move in with a friend. Maybe their parents love you and would take you in and you'd be in a better situation. But no, all that has to go through the government. So we're going to talk about all that when we come back. And again, tomorrow, be sure to tune in to our guest co-host Katie Reyes and I as we talk about our upbringing and our parenting. I guess we weren't the ones parenting, but the parent-ease and how we were parented as kids, and our thoughts on parenting and our philosophy regarding our future kids. And that will be tomorrow, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. And we are on Tuesday through Thursday, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. And if you'd like to call in with any questions or comments, 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. Or you can Skype in Nonpartisan Liberty for all one word. And you can get all that information at our website, nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And please like us on our Facebook pages, the Nonpartisan Liberty for All, our official Facebook page, as well as And the Government Police, and all our other social media that you will find links to at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And just a reminder to people real quick that don't know a lot about the show, I work full time. I don't make any money off the show. Of course, if you'd like to donate, you can donate at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. I don't expect people to, so it's not something where I'm like other hosts, you should donate and give me money and all this shit. No, if you want to, hey, that's great. If you don't, hey, that's fine too. I don't expect anybody to donate or feel that they're obligated because they listen to the show or whatever. But now I've totally forgot my point. But if you could just support us by liking the pages and going to the website. And my point being that I put a lot of time into the show and it means a lot to me, and I do it for free, which is fine. It's what I want to do. But just so people know, my only point is that I'm very dedicated to this. Because if I wasn't, I wouldn't spend the time, doing the show 3 nights a week and preparing for it and putting everything together. And I wish I could spend more time on my preparation, because I feel like the show would be 100 times better if this was my full-time job. But I just want people to know that I am dedicated to doing this, and it's not a hobby for me. It's, my part-time night job that I don't get paid for. So not that I'm asking for any credit, but just so people know that, this does mean a lot to me, and I take this seriously. And things like this, like parenting, I think could be something that could change the future possibly. So anyway, we will be back right after this. And also, for people that don't know, I don't play any commercials. I don't have any advertisers. Of course, if anybody would like to advertise, please get in touch with me. But what I play during the breaks are clips that are related to what we're talking about. So don't hear that there's a break coming up and tune away because you think it's a commercial or something like that. It's actually important information, especially with this week's show, and clips from the radical unschoolers and their lives, and the peaceful parenting. And yesterday we played clips about helicopter moms who are crazy, and free range parents, and all of that as well. So we'll be right back after this. Nonpartisan Liberty for all.com.
I think our neighbors would describe us as strange. I think they kind of walk by their homes and look over at us with weird glances sometimes. And, while all of their kids are getting on the bus in school, our kids are sleeping. They stay up till 3 in the morning, and they wake up at probably, 10 or 11 and start their day when most kids are, getting home from school. So I think we live a really unique life, and I never pictured my life to be like this. This wasn't something I planned. It just really authentically happened, and it feels really right to us to be, in a partnership with our kids. There's no hierarchy in our house. Nobody is an authority. We are all equal. And although we're leaders, my husband and I, Joe, are leaders in our family, we definitely respect everything the kids say and ask for. So our role in life is to help our kids get whatever they want in life, more of it. And we facilitate their learning. And in doing so, it leads to a really joyful partnership.
We're fortunate enough that I'm a work-at-home dad, which gives us the ability to be with the children a lot. It gives us the ability to travel. It gives us the ability to show our children how to make a living by promoting your own business, by having a sale to get more customers, and different ways to reach people and get the word out. It's pretty interesting, actually.
I think what you're modeling and what we're doing is that we're not raising worker bees. We're not raising yes men or kids that jump through hoops or take orders. We're raising free-thinking entrepreneurs by living this way, and you're totally modeling that to them. And our kids have had their own businesses since they were 4 years old, from chocolate businesses to lemonade stands to Etsy stores, and you name it. So I think you living this life has really inspired the kids to know that they never have to work for somebody else. They can make money off just pursuing their interests and passions in life like you have. I describe myself as a perfectionist, and my husband as not. I think that Joe is really authentic in who he is, and he really owns his emotions. When he's angry, he expresses it. When he's happy, he expresses it. He's very just himself, and he doesn't worry about what other people think. No, we are not strict parents in the sense of demanding obedience. I think obedience is old school. It's imposing rules on your kids is a lazy form of parenting to me. Rules are for the lazy parent. We find win-win situations with all of our dynamics with our kids, and strict, no, not at all.
Very relaxed.
Yes. We do not divide discipline because we don't discipline. I think that discipline is really disrespectful. I think that what we do is we're good people in this world, and we model how to be good people. We model how to treat others, and we treat our kids with respect and kindness, and from our perspective, respect begets respect, and kindness is when you're kind, the kids are kind. So we don't have to do anything or impose any kind of rules or strict discipline. We just are good people in this world, and our kids learn from that.
Right, because when you have no rules, you can't break those rules. So it's hard to even, where do you draw the line at who's doing what wrong? There's no wrong.
Right, exactly.
I think what frustrates me about the way other people raise their children is they're just passing on what they were raised like. They just take what they know as a parent or a child and just instill it into their children, and it just keeps on going generation after generation, and they don't try to grow their knowledge of other parenting styles at all.
I think what frustrates me about other parents is when they think that they know better than their kids. That this life is about, radical unschooling is about trusting your children in their choices and knowing that they know what's best for them, not us. I totally trust them in whatever they want to do. And it frustrates me when other parents are mean to their kids through punishing them and treating them like crap. I mean, everywhere you go, you see it. You see parents hurting their kids verbally, and it's so okay in our culture, but it's not to us. So we're definitely paving new trails living this life of respect with our kids. We have no rules about our kids' appearance. We want them to be authentic and dress like they want to dress. And if they want tattoos and piercings, we totally support that. We have tattoos ourselves. We have, 6 tattoos between us?
Yeah.
So, no.
Well, they're too young for tattoos, but Devin has his ears pierced. The girls have their ears pierced.
Yeah.
And
they can dress however they want. Devin makes his own clothes. He dresses really uniquely. I think people that see him that are more mainstream probably think he looks pretty radical or dresses kind of weird, but I love that he can be himself, and he's not following anyone else's style or fashion other than his own, so that's pretty cool side effect. Yeah. Our daughter Tiffany, Tiffany's name, her given name is Dakota, actually. She was born, and I named her Dakota. When she was around 3 years old, she said that I don't feel like a Dakota. That's not me. That's not my name. My name is Tiffany, and I want to be called that. And she's 10 now, and we respected that for 7 years, and we're legally going to change her name when she's ready, whenever she says. We're happy to do that. Tiff wears a wig because she feels more herself when she has her wig on or her hat on, and we've always respected that. It's such a mandatory. In fact, and I don't think we hold college as in any higher regard compared to an apprenticeship or something. That if our kids want to go to college, great, but it's definitely not a goal and a focus. It's only a choice for them.
Right. And with the internet nowadays, learning can happen right at your fingertips, so you don't need to go anywhere to learn.
And there's this whole movement called Uncollege, where people are sharing that you can learn just as much at home or out pursuing your interests through different resources that are available. That college is really just a money trap, and our kids never have to get sucked into that if it's not something they want to be doing.
What's going on, Internet? It is your boy, Eric Van Holtz, back again with another awesome episode from Beard Brand. Hope all's going well on the other side of the Internet. It's been a little while since I've broached into the personal freedom videos, but I wanted to talk about something that's really intriguing to me, kind of introduce you guys to this idea, and it's a new journey for me. It's something that I'm learning about, and maybe try to build a community of other like-minded people out there. It's called peaceful parenting. And for those who don't know, I had my firstborn about a year ago. And, oh my God, is she not cute? Look at that girl. So, that's my daughter. And when you become a parent, and I'm sure there's a lot of other fathers out there who watch this channel, there's all sorts of ideas on how to raise your children, and I'm not here to tell you this is how you raise your children. What I'm here to do is say, this is what's intriguing to me, and this is something that I want to do, and just share it with you guys. And if you find it intriguing as well, we can talk more about it. If you don't find it intriguing, then we can skip over it. But the basic concept of peaceful parenting is that your parenting style is without any kind of punishment, like spanking or timeout. And instead you try to parent them through empathy and understanding the situation and understanding their development and reacting accordingly. So it's not about having perfect little children who are very well behaved, but it's about communicating with your child directly, helping them understand how people interact and understand the situation the best to their ability, and then helping them learn and grow and become stronger individuals and more independent individuals. And one of the downsides, I want to say downsides, but with traditional, I'm going to call it traditional parenting because I don't know if there's a term for it, but when you punish a child or when you spank them, what you're doing is you're creating a hostile relationship between you, the parent, and the child, where the most important people in their lives are abusing them. Spanking is a physical abuse. Yelling is also a verbal abuse. And then punishment is a form of, abuse as well. I don't know if punishment, if abuse is the right word. I don't want to get into semantics. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. If not, then just talk semantics and call me an idiot. But anyways, so you're building this divide between you, your child, who has no option in their parents at all. Like, they were born into us. We are all that they have. They don't have the choice to say, oh, I want to go to my neighbors to be my parents, or I want to go to my grandparents to be my parents. Their only choice is us. So it's our duty to be the best parent that I can. And for me, that means if there is a situation arises when my child is misbehaving or not acting appropriate, it's an opportunity to educate her on the appropriate actions and calm her down in a way that she can understand what I'm talking. So it takes a little bit of time to calm down, get down at their level. It's a very energy-intensive process to be a peaceful parenting. You can't just spank them and send them on their way and expect them to learn. You've got to calm them down, help them understand what you're trying to say, and explain to them why that situation's not right. In addition to that, as a parent, you've got to understand the various cycles of childhood. Similar to how when a baby cries, maybe at inappropriate times, you don't spank the baby or punish the baby to get her to stop crying. What you do is you feed her or, change her diaper or what else do you do with babies? Put them to bed. And the same thing happens as a child develops throughout their whole life and how people develop as well. So as they hit their toddler ages, they're running into different things and they're trying to understand language and maybe they can't communicate at the level that I can communicate at. I've been speaking for 30 years or so, right? And I've got a pretty good grasp of conversation and language and not a perfect one, as you could see earlier in my video. But children don't have that same type of skills developed. So we need to be patient with them and really give them all the tools possible to help them better communicate with us. And patience is one of the things. And one of the great things about being a beardsman is as you grow your beard out, you become a lot more patient. So I want to try this. I'm going to not strive to have a perfect child. I'm going to strive to have a child who's open to learning and who is not afraid to communicate with me and not afraid to spend time with me and open-minded to our relationship as it grows down the road. So if there are any other peaceful parents, I don't know, is that what they're called? Peaceful parents out there. Please comment in there and give some tips and some advice on what it means, maybe some resources. I'll share with you some of the content that I found about it. And if it's something you're interested in, I'll dig down deeper and maybe go into specific lessons that might be helpful to handle various scenarios for children of various ages. But as always, thanks for watching. We're here to make the world better, and we're here to make future generations better. And I think nonviolent communication and nonviolent parenting is a great step in that process. So again, thanks for watching.
promoting the ideas of true freedom and liberty, nonpartisan liberty for all radio with Dave Bourne.
702-407-7664 is the phone number if you'd like to call in. Nonpartisan Liberty for All is the username if you'd like to Skype in, and you can get all that information at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. All of our contact information, websites, all of that fun stuff, social media. Well, I guess that's what I meant when I said websites, because I have one website, but then, all the social media sites are there as well. So during the break, I played two clips, one that had to do with radical unschooling. And as I mentioned, and that was Dana Martin and her family, who again is I mentioned yesterday kind of the big names for certain types of parenting. So when I think of peaceful parenting, I think of Stefan Molyneux, who is a philosopher / liberty personality, I guess. I don't know that he actually went to school for philosophy. I think he might have mentioned he minored in it or something. I don't know, but either way, he, really to be a philosopher, I don't know that you need to go to school. You just need to think about things. But he presents them in a philosophical way, which I try to do at times as well. Of course, I don't do it anywhere near as well as he does. But I think of Stefan Molyneux, although the clip I played was not Stefan Molyneux, it was somebody else talking about peaceful parenting, but they pretty much hit on the same points that Stefan does. And as I mentioned, the radical unschooling was Dana Martin and her family, who is, I believe, the most well-known radical unschooler. Again, if you go to YouTube, all you'll find, if you put in radical unschooling, is Dana Martin videos for the first, 3 or 4 pages. So there are a lot of differences there, and even listening to those two clips, I think you can see. Now, part of it is they have different personalities. I would say that you can tell. The second guy who talked about I'll call him the bearded guy because he has a big beard, who talked about peaceful parenting as opposed to Dana Martin. They have different personality types as well, and that may or may not have to do with their views and their what they're presenting or what they're talking about. But I want to again reiterate that radical unschooling goes together with the parenting part of it. You really can't have one without the other, because part of radical unschooling is allowing your kid to kind of choose. It's an integration really between your life and your schooling, because you're learning as you live your life. So it's okay, what do you want to do? And as you choose to do something, you're learning in what you're doing, but it could be something as simple as, well, let's go to the mall and we're going to somehow integrate that, a store at the mall or something, as opposed to having a classroom-like setting. So when it comes to, and I'm not going to get into unschooling, we've talked about that in the past, although I believe that in both peaceful parenting and radical unschooling, you should take your kid out of government schools. Now, I guess you could still practice the ideas of peaceful parenting without taking your kid out of government school, but I would think that would be pretty hard to do, because everything they're going to teach you in government school or teach your kid in government school is going to be the opposite of what you're trying to do, in my opinion. Now, there may be a lot of people that do that. And this whole idea, and I've talked about this before, that, well, oh, I can't homeschool because I'm a single mom, or, you know, we're a married couple, but we both work, is really a cop-out, I think. And I'm not in that position, so it's hard to judge people when you're not in their shoes. So I will say that. And I'm making a general statement. There are, of course, situations where maybe one of the parents is working 2 jobs and the other one is working 1. And, you know, I'm sure there's some situations, but a small percentage, where it would be very, very difficult for the parents to pull that off. But the majority of people, they have family that's supportive. Not everybody does. Like it's a fact. I mean, I don't have any family in Las Vegas. So right there, it would make it a lot harder for me now. At some point, my mother would probably move out here. So if she was here, you know, I'd obviously have somebody to help me with my kids. Although she says when she retires, she wants to retire and not deal with little kids, but I know she'll see those kids and, you know, want to spend time with them. But the point being that, no, I don't have any family out here, and my fiance, you know, only has her mother out here. But what I would plan to do is have her stay home and I would work, because not only is government school bad in the sense of what it teaches and how it teaches kids to learn I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. It dumbs them down, but what I got from John Taylor Gatto, and he didn't come out and say this, but he insinuated that they teach you the hardest way to do something to try to make you stupider. So instead of using it would be like doing a multiplication problem, and instead of memorizing your multiplication tables and just doing it in your head real quick, doing it out on a piece of paper and doing out like this long, or say division, because, you know, you're doing out like a long division problem out of something that you can do in your head. And that they use that to actually dumb you down. Now, he was a teacher for 30 years and has written many books. And I would suggest looking him up. He has plenty of interviews on YouTube, and you can also find his books. I think JohnTaylorGatto.com. But not only do you have to deal with that part of government schools, it's also the fact that government schools are taxpayer funded or government funded, but where does the government money come from? And really, and people are going to think this sounds bad, but why should I have to pay for anybody's kids to go to school when I don't have any kids? And I'm not sure in Las Vegas where the money is coming from, because from what I understood, property taxes went to the police. So I don't know if it's split up. A portion of property taxes goes to schools. I know that part of sales tax goes to the police now to hire extra police, but I thought it was property taxes that went to the police. So I'm not sure what funds, and how much of the state actually funds the schools as well. And you had I believe it was specifically Las Vegas that I'm thinking about, and not the country, but there was an article about, poorer neighborhoods and they're not getting as good as an education. And really, the answer is always throw more money at it. And that's why they're not getting as good of an education. It's not the kids or anything, or teachers that don't want to teach in poor neighborhoods because a lot of the kids don't care, or some of them are dangerous or don't put in the time to do the work. And some of them, of course, do. But to me, if you live in a neighborhood and you're paying the money to support the schools in your neighborhood, why should that go over to, why shouldn't your money be going to the school where your kid's going? Now, really, again, I don't believe that any money should be going to government schools. I don't think they should exist, period. I think that now, of course, right away, people are going to say, well, okay, poor kids aren't going to get an education. Well, that's where I think that's a bunch of bullshit, because first of all, we've talked about the history of government schools. I'm not going to go into that now, where it was based on the Prussian model and to indoctrinate kids and all of that. But I mean, right now we're talking about homeschooling. In poorer communities, people can't homeschool. And I was just actually getting into, and we could take a step back and get back to this, where everybody should be able to homeschool their kid on some level. Now, that doesn't mean a one-to-one, you are the one teaching your kid. Especially if you're talking about poorer neighborhoods, where if you have a mother who is on government assistance and she's home, why are you not homeschooling your kids? What the fuck is that? So if you're not working because you have a few kids and you're collecting public assistance, and then you're also getting, school for free, of course, as everybody is, you can't actually, homeschool your kids. So there's no excuse right there. Anybody who lives in, who's in a situation for whatever reason, and I'm not knocking the people that are in that situation, I'm just saying that if you're home, regardless of the reason why, but especially if you're collecting public assistance and you're home, why can't you homeschool your kids? You're talking about, well, the schools in your neighborhood suck. So this is something that most people don't do. And I'm not just saying poor communities don't do this neither. This is not the poor communities versus the rich communities or anything like that. What I'm talking about is really just the government and the government forcing people to do things. But if poorer communities, or any community for that matter, are upset with their school system, which I think everybody should be upset with the school systems, but for a different reason, for the fact that they're fucking robbing you, they're indoctrinating your kids. Now, in poorer communities, at least in the article that I read, and see, this is what they try to do, and it fucking pisses me off, is they try to divide people and, of course, make it out like all black people and Hispanic people live in poor communities, which is not the case. So they're looking at community, a few different communities that happen to be all black or all Hispanic, but there are plenty of black and Hispanic people that live in mixed communities all over Las Vegas. So to say that, oh, well, it's, you know, it's more the poorer communities, and there's plenty of poor fucking white people, and I see them, you know, anytime you drive through downtown or neighborhoods downtown, there's plenty of poor white people hanging around, you know, homeless or just out there doing whatever they're doing. So they, being government media, of course, wants to make this into totally a racial thing that, oh, well, they don't want to give money to the black and Hispanic communities. And I hate that the communities, like, if you're black, you're part of the black community. Now, if you want to talk about, or if you're Hispanic, you're part of the Hispanic community. So my fiance, who's Mexican, is such part of the Hispanic community, even though she lives in a mixed community. So, like, our next door neighbors on one side are black, across the street they're black, on the other side they're white. You know, I don't know the ethnicity of every neighbor. I know there's a bunch of other white neighbors further down the street. I've seen Hispanic kids walking to school. It's a mixed neighborhood, and it's a good neighborhood too, actually. So they, again, being government media, which is pretty much run by the government, they want to basically divide and conquer, get people fighting amongst each other so they're not together fighting against the government. But in any community, whether it's poor or not, people can get together. And this is why I'm saying that anybody can homeschool their kids, because all you need to do is find like-minded people and you can share responsibilities. You know, one day one person can do it, one day another person can do it. Or if it's a situation where somebody works at night and you want to do homeschool during the day, and then in exchange for that, they can babysit your kids on the weekends. I mean, there's a lot of things you can work out. Or everybody also gives, you know, a small amount of money as dues for any type of supplies or something like that. And I'm talking, you know, $20 a week or something like that. Something that people can afford, not, you know, a ridiculous amount of money, because I don't really think that you need that much anyway. You have a designated house, whoever the person that is going to conduct the class. And then when you get a bunch of people together, they have different strengths. So on your day off, maybe you're good in history or something. So, you know, you could have that person teach history to the kids. And I'm just giving examples. But what I'm saying is that communities can get together. And it doesn't have to be the whole community. I'm just using the word communities. But people can get together and homeschool their kids that way and get around the system and say, fuck the government. We don't need you. We're going to do this on our own. And that's what communities need to do. And I keep using the word communities, but people need to do. I'm saying communities because I think the whole community, not necessarily the whole community has to get together with each other, but different people, there could be all these different groups within a certain community. And when I say community, I just mean a geographical fucking area is really all I mean. But it doesn't have to be somebody who lives even near you. I mean, like-minded, I mean, close enough where they live in the same city, but I mean, they don't have, if you live in a poor neighborhood and they live in an average neighborhood, it doesn't mean that you can't get together and share those responsibilities of homeschooling your kids. and at the same time of taking care of them when they're not in school. And with the internet, before the internet, I'm sure it was a lot harder, and I understand it being hard to find people, even though you had newspapers, you had want ads, you had even people dated that way. But now with the internet and Craigslist and Facebook and all of these things, there's really no excuse. It may be hard. Yeah, you may have to sacrifice more of your time. But if you decided to be a parent, and to me, it doesn't matter whether it was a mistake or not, you decided to be a parent. You could have had an abortion. You could have gave the kid up for adoption. So, that covers, I guess, both parties. It's bipartisan that whether you wanted to have the kid give it up for adoption or have an abortion, you chose to have that kid. So if you actually care about your kid having a good education, there's things you can do. And you're going to get a better education, in my opinion, outside of government schools than inside them. Government schools are a failure. You can look at statistics. And when you have people that actually care, and whether they care about your kid personally or not is irrelevant, because if you're sharing responsibilities, they'll care about your kid because you care about their kid, meaning that you're doing things to help their kid, so they're going to do things to help your kid because they don't want, you to not take as much time on their kid, so they'll take as much time on their kid. I totally explained that in a fucked up way, but meaning that as a group, and you'll need to find, you'll want to find good people, of course, and you might not find that right away, but you should be able to find it. And there's a lot of homeschooling materials out there. There's so much help, because you may be somebody who says, well, I can't teach kids. I can't help them get through this information. Well, first of all, as I was saying, there are other things you could do, like babysit during a certain time or something like that. Or you could, and not actually be involved in the homeschooling part. Your part would be, okay, well, you homeschool my kid and I'll watch your kid after homeschooling while you're working or during the weekends or whatever. So however you work it out, that's up to you. But there are so many resources, and once they get to high school, there's online schools anyway. There's an online public school, at least in Las Vegas, where kids can do everything online, and they get a diploma just like they went to school. So you can and the curriculum is not the same. It's not Common Core bullshit. Now, that doesn't mean that it still doesn't try to indoctrinate kids, but they're not there with all the discipline and all the bullshit from the teachers. So I don't think people have an excuse if they really want to do it. And it may be hard. It's just like when I talk about careers and jobs and getting ahead. It may be hard, and I think it's harder now than it was 20 years ago. But you just have to put in more work, unfortunately. And I know it's easy to say, but if you want to get ahead, it's what you got to do. The same thing where if you want your kid to be successful and to get a good education, you got to go out and make sacrifices. Otherwise, don't have kids in the first place. Don't expect the government to take care of your kids, because government schools are government babysitting. That's what it is. Bottom line, it's government babysitting, and it's paid for by, if you're paying taxes, then you're pretty much probably covering your kid. But I don't know what the average amount is per year per student. Maybe you're not. I know I paid the $20,000 last year just out of my paycheck, counting, not just counting federal tax, counting Social Security and Medicare and all that shit. So I would think that $20,000 would pay for fucking more than one kid in school. Now, that money's not going to the schools, but I'm just, just as an example. So if your kid is not getting a good education, you have to take some responsibility for that. Now, I know that schools are fucked up. The government's fucked up. They have corporations are fucked up, and the government has totally picked the winners and losers to allow the big corporations to buy everything up, along with the banks and the Fed and all of that stuff. And we're not going to get into any details on all of that. But yes. But what are you going to do? You can do one or two things. You could sit there and say, what, fuck it, I just give up. Or whatever, my kid will just have a fucked up education. Or you can do something about it. Yes, it's going to be hard. But you can look at what your priorities are, and based on those priorities, do what's going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So getting back to peaceful parenting, I believe that for it to truly be effective, that you cannot have your kid in a government school. Now, can you have your kid in a private school? I don't know. Private schools still teach discipline, which is something that schools should not be teaching. That's something I've been saying since I was a kid, and we'll talk about that tomorrow when we get into tomorrow. I think is going to be a very interesting show, because just what the stuff I went through and the type of person my father was, is just, there's just so much stuff. We'll probably go to at least 10 o'clock tomorrow, because we also need to, of course, get Katie's information and her parenting. I don't think that's going to take as long, to be honest, but it will be an interesting show. I promise you that. Probably entertaining, depending on what you think is entertaining. But I don't think you can do any of this without first taking your kids out of government schools. And this whole bullshit going back to the fact that if there wasn't government schools, that poor kids wouldn't get educated. Obviously, I just shown that that's bullshit. I mean, there are other ways around that too. But, there are scholarships. There are schools that would help, because it would be, if there were any schools, they'd be private schools. Obviously, if there were no public government-funded schools. So there'd be scholarships. There'd be need-based scholarships. There'd be plenty of kids that would be able to go to school that couldn't afford it. And then, of course, I would say you'd still be better off homeschooling your kid, and you have that option as well. So this whole idea that if government doesn't come up with the money for something, that nobody else is bullshit. You have, as it is, and I don't know what the figures are, you have so many people giving to charity as it is. But if something no longer existed and taxes disappeared, so people had even more money, they'd give more money for one, and they'd give it to that specific need. Nobody's giving money to public schools. I mean, maybe some people, actually, that's probably not true. I know people are giving money to private schools. Former alumni give money all the time, get buildings named after them. I don't know if people are giving money to public schools, but they probably are too. But it would be on a much bigger level, because if there were no more public schools, people would recognize that need, assuming that there was that need. Again, I still go back to the, homeschooling, but that would happen with so many different things. And I know the average person is going to say, no, it wouldn't. Poor people would go without, and this and that. And the things that people wouldn't get, I think what would happen is people couldn't take advantage of the system anymore, and that's what would disappear. The people that really needed help and needed money and needed a place to stay and needed all these things would get them. The people that are gaming the system wouldn't get them, and that would be the difference. And those are the people that would be scared, the people that can actually do something if they wanted to, but they're living off the government. And public schools, I believe, and I'm going to read this because I want to do a show on it, and I don't know enough about it yet to do a show on it, although I know a lot of the communist planks, but I want to do a show on Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto, and I believe public schools, which is a socialist program, people act like, especially Republicans, they act like there's no socialism in the U.S. What do you think public schools are? And then, and I think this was on Bill Maher, somebody will bring that up like, oh, what about public schools? And, they'll bring up something else, and they'll admit that, yeah, well, there's some socialism, like it's okay. And to me, it's not okay. And it is, I believe, one of the planks of the Communist Manifesto. I know what graduated income tax is. And Russia, I believe I mentioned this. If I didn't mention it on the air, I know I mentioned it within my house because I mentioned it to my fiance. But Russia has a flat tax of 13%. The United States has a graduated income tax. I don't know what the highest tax bracket is. I think it's close to 40%. Now, yes, I know that in certain, I went through every year to see what the, I hope I still have the piece of paper somewhere, because you can look it up. It's not like I went through, like it took me, a half hour to find every year. I mean, it's all in one place, probably, I think, on one website, but went through and looked at every year of income taxes, what the income tax rate was, the federal income tax rate. And I know at one point it was at 90%. That was the maximum. But then again, I don't know what could be written off at that time and exactly how it worked. And a lot of that was around the time of the war, not that that makes it okay. So, yeah, the U.S. government had crazy tax rates. But when they started out, I believe in the first couple years, I don't think the first year, but I remember when it was like, I don't remember like I was alive, but when I was looking at it, that it was like 5%. at one point was the highest tax bracket. And that was all a setup so the money could go to the millionaires, the meeting on Jekyll Island, all of that. They were running the government without an income tax. And what it allowed them to do is what you see now. Go out of control and let the federal government get involved in all these things that they weren't supposed to get involved in. But that's a whole nother story. Education being one of them. It is illegal. I don't know if illegal would be the right terminology, but definitely unconstitutional for the federal government to be involved in education, because unless it specifically spells out in the Constitution that the federal government is let me rephrase that, has the right or has the responsibility to be involved in something, it's up to the states. That's what the 10th Amendment is. Education is up to the states, usually the local communities. But what Common Core did, and this is really unprecedented in this sense, although since the beginning of schools, it was all about indoctrination. You know, they just got, like I said, this is always hard for me to explain and communicate the way I want to, but it's almost like, you know, you start at the beginning, and as you go, they get closer and closer to their agenda. So they started with schools, and the goal of schools was indoctrination. That was where they even took it from from the Prussian model. And then they slowly got more away from education, got more, you know, it started off with a lot of discipline, more discipline, I think, than there is now, obviously. And you had to wear uniforms. Imagine that. You're forced to go to a public school. You're forced to go there, and you have to wear not uniforms, but you have to wear like shirt and pants. I remember my father telling me, I think his senior year was the first year that he could wear jeans. And that's a violation of your freedom of expression. But of course, you're not 18, so what does it matter? Although a lot of seniors are 18. So I guess you're in a high school that the majority of it is kids, so it doesn't matter. But think of that. They force you to go there, but while they're forcing you to go there, they're also forcing other things upon you. It's like taxes, where they force you to not only pay taxes, but sign under penalty of perjury. It's insanity. The whole government is insanity. But whatever. But with schools, what I'm saying is, from the beginning, the goal was to dumb people down, create an elite class, or not create, I mean, I guess they had it, but build it up, dumb down everybody else. And they continued to get better at dumbing people down and indoctrinating people and pushing government values and government ideas, and that the government is great. And they finally got to the point where now they have federalized the school curriculum. Now, they being the federal government, will tell you the governors of each state voted it in. Well, yes, they voted it in because they were blackmailed. They were told, if you voted in, we're going to give you this amount of money, and that whole race to the top thing, and that's why they voted it in. But now you have the federal government with the ability to have a curriculum to teach everybody the same thing in order to indoctrinate everybody the way they want to. So I'm kind of getting a little off topic, although this does relate to peaceful parenting. But the bottom line is government school, and peaceful parenting, or any type of freedom-oriented parenting, doesn't work, in my opinion, in the way that I envision it working. So, yes, you can still send your kid to a government school and give them those same freedoms, but they're also going to be taught basically the opposite of not what you're so much teaching them, because it's not really all about teaching them. It's just giving them their freedom to decide. But then at the same time, they're experiencing freedom. They're having anti-freedom ideas rammed down their throat. So, and in the context of what the whole idea of tonight's show was, is that to raise kids to believe in freedom and want to live free, it's counterproductive, and it will help to reduce the amount of kids, I think, that end up with those beliefs. So to me, it's kind of a two-part thing. It's one is it's good for kids to know that they own themselves, that it's their life and not their parents', that they're not owned by their parents, that they have the right to make decisions in their life and do what they want with their life. That's how things should be. Now, the other part of that, and this is where my, I guess, thinking and ideas come into it, where will that help to also raise kids, although it's not the main goal. The main goal for parents is to raise kids, of course, that are, good kids, that are responsible, that have good morals, that are, believe in the non-aggression principle of not hurting people, things like that, and raising happy kids, obviously, at the same time. But raising kids that have the choice to experience life on how they want to experience it and do what they want to do and pick what they want to pick for a career and what they want to do for fun, and to know that they are free, at least from their parents, and that they were born free people to do what they want. Now, the government, of course, gets in the way of that, and if parents aren't getting in the way of that, it makes it a little easier. But at the same time, what I'm hoping is that if that happened, and I believe Stefan Molyneux said this as well, that he believes if everybody followed peaceful parenting, that we'd have a free society in no time. Now, maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't. I tend to think we would, and that was my thinking pretty much up until I was talking about it last night, and then I thought, well, will that actually influence kids to also believe in freedom? And I would think it would, but maybe not every kid, and maybe not as many as I would think. And I'm just more trying to play devil's advocate there. But along with having happy kids and that you're able to have a good relationship with, and all of the positive things in their life that come out of peaceful parenting or radical unschooling. The other side of that is having kids that when they grow up, they will help defend freedom, stand up for true freedom and liberty, not the bullshit Republican freedom. And have those values instilled in them that they want to live in a free society and that they don't need a government to tell them what to do, to get involved in their personal lives. So that's where, like I said, the government is way ahead of everybody. Not way ahead, but they know that you know, when kids are young, they're impressionable, that's when, you know, that's why they want to do the public pre-K, so they can get your kids even earlier. And they've been doing it in New York for a few years now. And of course, Nancy Pelosi was I talked about it on the show a couple weeks ago. Nancy Pelosi was there, of course, wants to do this federally, and Obama did too, and he talked about age 3. Think about that. So at age 3, the kids are supposed to, and, you know, the older you get, the faster time goes by too. But at age 3, mothers that are staying home with their kids, not all mothers do, but I'm saying mothers that are staying home with their kids, which at some point feminists got a problem with that, because a mother wants to stay home with her kids. There's something wrong with that. I don't see a problem where it's a mother or a father. I just think that if you want to have kids, that there should be, and I know there's things that happen, so you can't always ensure that that's what's going to happen. You can plan for that, but you could always get divorced, or you can't control other people's behavior, and things can happen. But I believe, you know, that aside, that when you're planning on having a kid, that it should be with the plan that one of the parents is going to stay home till that kid's at least old enough to be home by themselves during the day. Because if you're homeschooling them during the day, and maybe you're not, maybe you're doing it at night, but during the day, at that point, they could, you know, do homeschool on the internet or whatever. So whatever age, you know, whether it's 10, 11, 12, something like that, that I believe a parent should be home with their kid until that time. Because again, this government babysitting that everyone is expected to pay for, and a lot of people are paying for, obviously, all these other people's kids. And that's what government school is. Again, government babysitting. Now, I guess you could pay for daycare or something like that if you wanted to. But I don't think that, and again, this is just my ideas based off of more my, I guess, observations, my childhood, my research, all of those things. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean I'm right. I mean, I'm just somebody doing a little independent radio show. So obviously I'm going to talk about things and give my opinion. But I don't believe that, especially, you know, a kid probably at least under 8, I mean, that they should spend the whole day with a teacher in a classroom of kids where they might hate them, that they're forced to be in the same room with them all day. Because until I think like junior high, I don't know, they might have changed this. You pretty much are in the same classroom all day. I know in elementary school I was. So it would make more sense to me that they be around their parent. Why are they having kids? That they spend more time around their parents when they're that young than anybody else. And what are you going to learn from another fucking kid? Except bad things. You learn more from adults than kids. And it doesn't just have to be your parent. You know, you could go maybe become friendly with the neighbors and go over their house or whatever. You know, everybody's situation is different, or go to one of your relatives' houses. But the point being is that I think the majority of time should be spent with their parents, not around some stranger, i.e. the teacher. So I'm going to take another break. We'll go till 10 o'clock tonight because there's no way I'll be able to get through all the stuff I want to get through. You know, if I can get through it earlier, then I'll stop earlier. But I'm not going past 10 o'clock, but we may go till 10 o'clock tonight to get through the information, because I believe this is one of the most important things when it comes to having any type of freedom in the future. Because I keep thinking of that song, who sings is it Whitney Houston, I Believe the Children Are... I keep thinking of the Coming to America. I don't know how many people have seen Coming to America. It's pretty old now, but when they had Eddie Murphy, who was playing Randy Watson, and he sung, what is the name of that song? Greatest Love of All. So, like, I believe the children are future. Thank you. Teach them well and let them lead the way. So, Sexual Chocolate. And then Arsenio Hall introduced him as a preacher type guy. I introduced to you Randy Watson. Anyway, anyone who's seen Coming to America probably is like, what the fuck is he talking about? But anyway, the truth is that, I mean, it's true in that these are going to be the people that either let government continue to oppress and abuse and do the things they're doing, or not. And I mean, I think we're at that point right now, but we're going to be even further along. So the government, it's like a struggle between the government and the people for the minds of kids in a way. But again, the difference is I don't want to brainwash kids. I don't want to make their decisions for them. I don't want to tell them how to think or what to think. That's their freedom to do that. What I want to do is let them know that they have the freedom to question things. They have the freedom to critically think. They have the freedom to be their own person. Then what they do with that is up to them. So there's a big difference in wanting to give people freedom than indoctrinate people and tell them, no, this is how it is, and this is what you should believe, and this is what we want you to worship, government. So when we come back, we'll get more into peaceful parenting and, of course, into radical unschooling and kind of the differences and what is best. And I really think that's just, of course, a matter of opinion, what's best, and it depends on the kid as well. A more mature kid, I think, would be, or smarter kid would probably do better under some type of radical unschooling, but they might want structure. So it all depends. The main thing is the ideas of freedom and the ideas of Stefan Molyneux made a great quote, which I had posted today, where he said, and I'm looking for it, that refuse to impose your will on your child whenever possible. I don't think that was the actual quote that I was thinking of, though. No, because that was the, I believe, don't impose your will, period. But let me look this up real quick. And that's the difference, I think, with Stefan Molyneux. Oh, what he said, it is wrong to impose your will upon your children. So he kind of contradicted himself, because he said it's wrong to impose your will upon your children and try not to impose your will upon your children whenever possible. So the great quote is it's wrong to impose your will upon your children. But what he had also said in another video, and he may be evolving, especially as his daughter gets older, but that try not to impose your will whenever possible. And when you're dealing with, that's where, I guess I'll have to wait when and if I have kids, the ages of like 2 to 5 or something, is probably the hardest part to deal with, I would think, and how to not impose your will during that period at all, which means, telling them what to do, essentially forcing them, doing the same thing. And this is what I was just going to say was, you're doing the same thing the government is doing to your kids. Instead of, you're not going to kill them. Well, hopefully not. I know there's some crazy people. Or hopefully you're not going to hit them, but some people do that as well. But you're able to, if they don't listen to you, you could ground them. You could do whatever you want, really, within reason. I mean, ground them, take away their toys, things like that, because they won't do what you want them to do. And the difference in radical unschooling, what Dana Martin says, is to think about the wants and needs of your kids and to put those first. So there are some differences, and I'm probably somewhere in the middle, or maybe I'm more with the radical unschooling, with the exception of, I think there's some things that I'd want my kids to learn. I wouldn't force them to learn them, but I'd come up with a way to not con them into learning them, but getting them to agree to learn them by telling them how important it is. And it wouldn't be lying, really, so it wouldn't be conning them. It would be just be telling them what I think, and hopefully that would be enough. But I realize I don't have kids, so I know there's a whole bunch of people that would, of course, say, well, you don't have kids, so you don't know anything. You don't know what you're talking about. And just because I don't have kids doesn't mean I wasn't a kid and I didn't experience being parented and what the train wreck that was. So anyway, We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about peaceful parenting and radical unschooling. And again, don't forget, tomorrow, guest co-host Katie Reyes will join us, and we'll talk all about our experiences growing up and being parented, as well as our philosophy on our future kids. And when I say our future kids, meaning she is my fiance, so that might be an interesting interesting and entertaining conversation to listen to talk about us, not argue, hopefully, but talk about those differences that we have. So we will be back after this, nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And if you'd like to call in with your comments, 702-470-7664, 702-470-7664, or you can Skype in as well, username Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and you can get all that information at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, the phone number, the Skype username, among other things. So we'll be right back.
What is behind this? Why did you do it?
Do you know, people generally look at me and they say, I'm not a typical unschooler. You know, I'm really not, if you like, because I think that all of us have a view in our mind of your typical unschooler, radical unschooler. They're probably a little more relaxed, you know, and I'm kind of different.
But what was your turning point?
So what happened was I wasn't always like this, and I suppose that's where I'm coming from. I wasn't always like this. I was a very traditional authoritarian parent, and I was brought up very traditionally. I went to boarding school myself, and I started a few years ago to work on myself. And I began to, I got involved with a company in America called Executive Success Programs, and that really helped me to become more self-aware. So I began to change my viewpoint of how I was with my life. And then whenever the kids came along, I wanted to parent them in a way that was very peaceful and very humanitarian, very compassionate. But I found that really hard to do when I wasn't controlling them. I didn't want to control them. I didn't want to punish them. But it's very hard to get kids to do.
But that to me is the key. If you never discipline your children, you're going to have a relationship with them where they don't understand the boundaries so that you're going to have problems that, I mean, I don't have problems with my children. I don't have problems getting them to school. I don't have problems. I've taught them good manners. They know I'm their mum. And I tell them off when necessary. Now, when your children get into the big bad world, there is a society out there, and there are rules and regulations to society.
That's true.
Some boss is going to tell them off. How are they going to react to that? How are they going to join society like the rest of us do if they've not had that experience?
Well, there's a couple of things I would say, and the first one is it's very important to understand how a child develops and how their brain works, which is something that I'm massively interested in, and which is really why I started on this life in the first place. Before puberty, a child's brain isn't cognitive, so they don't reach cognition generally until the age of around 12 or 13. So before 12 or 13, they can't actually make sense of the world. So if something scary happens, or someone shouts at them, or someone's angry with them, they can't go, oh, you know, Jane was just having a bad day. She was late to work, her viscera's up, it's okay. They can't do that. They really take it on board, and they take it very personally. But after cognition, after puberty, something in the brain happens. And although if someone is angry with them, they may still have a fight or flight reaction, they don't make it mean something that it isn't. They can logically start to process things and say, well, that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, it just means she may be having a bad day.
Kim, can I just ask something? This all sounds really lovely in theory, but when you've got a child screaming on the floor and you're letting them eat whatever they want so they're surviving on Nutella and crisps, and they're not going to school, and you sound very fortunate that your children are hugely well behaved and very balanced,
and you don't have to work. People watching this will go, I can't have my kids at home all day.
But you're not saying everyone should do this. It's a lifestyle choice. Like me, I mean, I don't want anyone else necessarily to do what I'm doing, but for my children it works. And the thing is, I haven't got the courage to do the radical unschooling because I'd get too scared of what might happen, so I'm doing home educating. But the radically unschooled children I have met have been phenomenal. I'm going to be honest, I avoid them because they're so clever. I stand there feeling so stupid and confident and bright. And I get what you're saying. I think that when children are very small, I think if you're too controlling and like with my daughters, there was too much shouting at school, it actually undermined their confidence so much. They didn't believe they could do anything. Yeah. And now that they're blossoming so much. But what I find strange is the whole thing, like bedtimes, food, all of that. How do people respond to you?
Bedtimes, you all sleep in one bed?
They think we're crazy. Yes, we do all sleep in one bed. And actually, we didn't used to. There's the photo up.
That's...
Do you get any sleep? How do you get alone time with your husband?
Well, we have lots of bedrooms.
I just have to ask this question because I know people watching at home are going to be asking this. So when Mrs. Scroggins, whose kids go to school, takes them out for a week in term time to go on holiday because they can't afford to go another time, they get fined. Well, how come you can just say my children are no longer going to school? Where's the legislation here?
Yeah, well, there is legislation, obviously. I mean, I think in England there's actually case law about homeschooling, but in Northern Ireland, where I live, there's not any case law, but there is policy.
So no one comes and does any checks?
No, but they do send out regular letters and they offer help. So the help is there if you want it. They'll offer resources. They'll offer to check your children's work. They'll offer the help if it's there.
But you're obviously
I'm just very
dealing with
confident
this intelligently. What if there's a parent who can't be bothered to get their children to school, can't really be bothered to parent at all? Can they just go, I'm not sending my kids to school anymore, they can just sit and do gaming all day?
They probably could, but I think in every single circumstance in life there is extremes. You know, we have an obligation to feed our children good food, and there's governing bodies to make sure that we're nourishing our children the correct way, but nobody comes into your home to check. It's just assumed that you will. And honestly, we chatted about this before the show.
Teachers see children looking emaciated and report it.
Principle that you cannot initiate the use of force against. We all are down with the non-aggression principle that you cannot initiate the use of force against other people. You can use force in an extremity of self-defense and so on, but parenting, unless you're like Mr. and Mrs. Menendez, parenting doesn't really fall into the category of self-defense. So violence that is used in parenting is not morally legitimate. It is the initiation of the use of force to spank and to withhold food and to imprison and so on, and lock in the room and so on. So if we take those off the table as far as parenting goes, if we say, okay, look, I have these principles as non-initiation of force, so can't spank, can't deny food, can't imprison, in the same way we couldn't to any other human being who's an adult. What are my choices? What are my options? The first thing you have to do is deny yourself the capacity to use that kind of aggression, and then a whole bunch of things open up. Like when you privatize something that the government runs, a huge amount of creativity kind of flowers up to solve problems. So once you deny yourself coercion, you get to be creative. So there's some basic realities around the parent-child relationship that are really essential. And, it may seem obvious, but it's not something we think of very often. And I would sort of analogize them or compare them to a marital relationship, right? So, first of all, children do not choose us as parents. They don't choose to be born. They don't choose the family that they're born into. They don't choose when they're born. They don't choose what kind of person you are, where you are in your life, what your history was. They don't choose any of that stuff. Now, when I got married recently, just had our 10th wedding anniversary. When I got married, my wife and I, we got to date, we got engaged, we got to test drive each other. We had 11 months from the time we met until the time we got married, and that's relatively rapid. And we had the choice to not get married. We had the choice to marry other people. I'm thinking certain states in the Union, you can marry sock puppets and penguins and things like that. But we had the chance to test drive each other. We made that choice, and that, obviously a good thing. And we can also choose to leave the marriage at any time. My wife could wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, that's just one too many husbandly thoughts for me. I'm out of here, with a fan blowing hard behind. So the fact is that it's very different between a parent and a child than even sort of a man and a wife. And yet, we generally will try to treat adults in our life better than we treat our children. And that doesn't mean we're always treating our children bad. It just means in terms of their preferences. We all understand that we should have the right to choose to get married. We should have the right to leave marriages if they turn out to be abusive or destructive in some way. But these options are not available to children. Children didn't choose you. They didn't date you. They didn't say, hey, of all the people I could have as my mom and dad, I'm going to choose you because you're just fantastic. And they also can't leave. They, until they're 16 in some places, 18 in other places, they can't leave a negative family environment. They have obviously no legal independence. They have no financial independence. They just can't do anything about it. So they don't choose to be there, and they can't leave. And so if we sort of really mull over that, if we really absorb that reality, I think we can very quickly come to the conclusion that the people we should be treating the very best in our lives are the people who never made the choice to be with us and who can't leave, right? So, I mean, obviously I want my wife to love me. I try to be a good husband and a good friend to her and all of that. But if my wife had been assigned to me by the state or by the tribe or something like that, and she simply had to get married to me and she couldn't leave and she didn't choose to be there, I think we all understand that I would have to work even harder to win her love because of the involuntary nature of the relationship, both in its inception and in its continuance. I would have to work like super, super hard to win her love, much more than if she had chosen to be with me, because, chooses to be with me because hopefully she loves me already and so on. And so once we recognize and absorb that lesson, we really understand how important it is to treat our children as best as humanly possible, far better than any other relationship that we can imagine, because of the involuntary nature of the relationship and because not only because they don't choose to be there and they can't leave, we have to treat them the best to win their love. And the way we do that, of course, is we live principally. We don't use aggression, we don't spank, we don't hit, we don't yell, we don't threaten. And what we do is we ask for feedback and we say, my local pizza joint, every time I order there, sends me a little flyer or includes something which says, how did we do today? Did you like your pizza? Was it a good pizza? Could it have been better? Was it too hot? Was it too cold? Was it too grainy? Was it too much of this, not enough of this? And if you fill it out, then you get some prize or whatever if you win it. But how many parents do the same thing at the end of the day, say, what worked for you in the family today? What didn't work for you? What would you like to see more of? What would you like to see less of? Me as a pizza customer is not the most moral relationship in the world, but me as a parent to get feedback from my children is absolutely essential, that they actually get an enormous amount of feedback into the quality of their experience of me as a father. So I'm asking my daughter every day or two, hey, what did you like? What was your favorite part? What didn't you like? How did this work out? We had this conflict. How did it work out for you? And all that kind of stuff. Is there a better way I could be doing stuff? And all of that kind of consultation and feedback and principled living with regards to the rejection of the use of force, I sort of encapsulate around peaceful parenting. It brings, I think, the best of libertarianism, the non-aggression principle, and a customer-focused kind of lifestyle. Children are customers. Now, they're involuntary customers because they don't choose to be here, can't leave. But they are customers of our parenting. And I think if we were to treat them as well as, say, your average pizza joint treats a customer who has choices, I think we would understand that I don't think that we're really being as effective as we can be as parents. I think we kind of take it for granted. Well, they're here, they can't leave, and blah, blah, blah. We tend to blame kids. Even you at the beginning of the show said, well, I was spanked because I was a bad kid. So that's really, I think, the essence of what it is that I'm trying to talk about. Do the research before you become a parent. There's lots of great parenting books out there which teach you how to negotiate with your kids from a non-aggressive standpoint. There's parental effectiveness training, tons of books by lots of different people about how to parent peacefully and solicit feedback at all times. You are the provider of a service, the most important service in the world, which is the raising of children. How often do you poll your customers about how well you're doing and what their preferences are? And I think if we really treated children as if their preferences were the most important thing, and this does not mean, of course, everyone says, oh, indulge their every whim and so on. Well, that's... If children are listened to, they don't have whims. Whims is kind of a degrading way to talk about how children experience the world and how they feel and want things. But if we were to treat children as extra special, full-on human beings plus, which is really what they are, then I think the world would see a radical change in a generation or two away from these oligarchical hierarchies, these states and sort of hierarchical religions that dominate our society so much. I think it's a huge blow against public education to raise peaceful children who are able to negotiate. And I think it's, in a sense, it's the most revolutionary thing that can be done.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Call in at 702-470-7664 or Skype in. Username, Nonpartisan Liberty for All.
Nonpartisan liberty for all. Ooh, that was kind of loud. And we are back. Stefan Molyneux made some great points there. The other guy who probably got them from Stefan Molyneux in the first place, but maybe he didn't, so I don't want to just assume, but he said he did some research on peaceful parenting, and a lot of what you find is Stefan Molyneux. And I don't know if peaceful parenting is a term that was coined by him or not, but I know it is something that he has spent a lot of time and a lot of shows on. And he brings up the point that your kids don't have a choice in being your kid. They're there. They can't leave. They could hate you for all you know. And I guess a lot of times that does end up happening, usually later. But people don't usually think of it that way. You have a lot of people, I don't know how many, but I've heard people, not personally, but, you know, whether it's in interviews or on TV or whatnot, that think that their kids should be so thankful for them, for giving them life, that they owe them their life. And even like that whole saying, well, I brought you into this world, I can take you out. But nobody asked to be born. And to be forced to be in a situation where you can't leave and you are controlled to an extent is not a ideal situation to be in. Now, on the other side of it, of course, there's positives to being a kid. You don't have to pay for anything. You get, you know, a place to live, food, clothes, all of those things. If you have good parents, you get other things as well, toys and hopefully love, and you get to enjoy your childhood. But that's where him even bringing up, you know, asking or talking about how the kid feels, because wouldn't you want your kid to choose you? If your kid could be anybody's kid, and assuming that they somehow could have unlimited knowledge of fathers, and they could choose whoever, or fathers and mothers. I'm just thinking fathers because Stefan Molyneux was the one talking about it, but he's married, and of course he's a stay-at-home dad, but he does the show as well. But I'm sure he's with his daughter more because he's, you know, the one that's home more than his wife. I believe his wife has a career, and he is, from what I understand, you know, recording all this stuff at home. So wouldn't you want, whether you're a mother or a father, your kid to want to choose you? Now, I'm not talking about when I start to get into this a little more, you know, there's what do you want your kid to be spoiled and to walk all over you and all of that? And no, of course not. You don't want your kid to be arrogant and spoiled, but there's a way to make sure, well, I don't know if you can make sure 100%. I mean, it depends on what they tell you, but there's a way to talk to them about how they feel and how they feel about their life, and are they happy, and are you doing things wrong, or are you doing things right, or how do they feel about the way you're parenting them? Because it's set up just like government, where parents have a monopoly on their kids. Kids cannot go out, and even adopted kids can't do this. They can't go out and solicit like parents to adopt them. I mean, maybe if they're in a situation where they know one of their parents are dying, I mean, they only have one parent, say their father took off and they live with their mother and they're dying and they're trying to talk to family members or friends or whatever to adopt them or something like that. But in general, even kids that are being adopted or in foster homes waiting to be adopted aren't able to pick their parents. So now on the other side, you're not able to pick your kids, but at the same time, you're able to make a decision to have kids. So he makes, I think, a really good, not only point, but something that parents probably should be doing, especially with younger kids. Talking to them, and not in a way, again, you don't want them to take advantage of the situation, or you don't want to spoil your kids or have that type of thing going on. But you want them to tell you if, and one, to be able to, most kids don't even feel like they can talk to their parents. Even little kids. I mean, I think little kids probably feel more comfortable talking to their parents than teenagers. I don't know. But it's hard to think back that far. I don't think I was ever comfortable talking to my parents, especially my father, but that to talk to them about how they feel and how they feel about the job they're doing. And of course, yeah, if they're trying to take advantage of a situation, you know, you can tell, or if they're trying to get something out of it by manipulating the situation. I mean, kids are smart. You'll be able to tell that. But to just honestly see, if you build that relationship with them, though, they're not going to do that. And that's what people, I think, don't understand, that they automatically, you know, I mentioned in this one show, and I don't even know if I did, I think I might have did a show on it. The two words that I hate more than any is what if. What if this? What if that? What if? And that's what happens is, well, what if they do this? What if they do that? What if, and you heard the lady in the clip about the radical unschooler. Well, you're just going to let your kids do this? Well, what if they do this? Or what if they do that? Or what? It's always what if. What if you want to think about what if, I mean, there's so many things that could happen just by accident, never mind, you know, these other stupid things that people are worrying about, from giving your kids some freedom. Well, what if they, and you think about some of these things and the reactions, and there's no way that they're not conditioned, like bedtime. In some of and I might have played this video yesterday, in the Radical Unschooling with Dana Martin's family, they ask, what time, or mention that the oldest, who at the time might have even been 12 or 11, stays up all night, goes to bed sometimes at 1:30 or 2 o'clock. And the reporter's like, oh my God, you let him stay up that late. Well, so fucking what? What is the negative on letting them stay up that late? Could they even name what the problem was? Now, if it was something where you have to get up at 6 a.m. and you're going to bed at 3, and I've done that before, and yeah, it's not a good thing to do. But you're talking about kids that are unschooled, and they can get up when they want. So what is the big deal about them going to bed late at night? And I guarantee you, this reporter, they couldn't tell you what's wrong with it. They'd probably just say, well, because you're 11 years old, which is a meaningless argument. So a lot of these things, they can't really argue a legitimate reason as to why they shouldn't be doing them. It's just I've been conditioned, this is what I do. I mean, in all seriousness, that's kind of what it is. It's a conditioning thing, and it's really fucked up when you think about it, because a lot of the things that they're getting upset about, like staying up late or being able to eat whatever they want, and you have the parents even saying that, okay, well, they wanted to eat, say, cookies, and they didn't stop them. They say, all right, you want to eat cookies, eat cookies. And you know what happens? They get sick. And in this specific story, they never ate cookies again because they ate so many cookies, they got sick and didn't want to eat cookies anymore. So what happens is, when you keep things from kids, when they're only able to have things sometimes when you give them permission, they're going to take advantage of it when they're able to do it. So, for example, if they're not able to do something that they want to do, you keep them from doing it. If they get in any situation, they're going to take advantage and do that thing that they want to do, whether it's go out somewhere or go drinking or whatever it might be. So I think most people realize, for one, that kids want to do what they can't do, first of all. And for the most part, they're going to do it whether you let them or not, because they're going to find some way, whether it's sneaking out the house, or you can't be there 24/7. Now, maybe when they're a little kid, you can, but it gets to a point where parents cannot be there all the time. And the more that you tell them what to do, the more controlling you are, they're going to resent you at some point as well. And that's where you have, girls that say go off to college that were brought up strict their whole life. Then they go to college and go crazy because they didn't have that freedom. The other thing, and I think both peaceful parenting and radical unschooling abide by this, is self-ownership and not being the quote that the second one from Stefan Molyneux, let me just, that it's wrong to impose your will upon your children. It's wrong to use force. And he also quotes the NAP, the non-aggression principle, that it's wrong to use aggression against your kid. Because really, what are you doing? You're getting similar, like I said, close to what the government's doing. No, you're not using guns to do it, but you're forcing them, and you're using force to an extent to do it. Whether you're, putting them in their room or locking them in their room or taking away their toys or something along those lines. And for what? I mean, what does it even do? Now, in the last 15 minutes, I kind of want to go through some of the differences between the two, looking at radical unschooling, obviously, as the more radical one, hence the name. Because in radical unschooling, like I said, the unschooling goes with the whole thing. You can't have the radical unschooling without having the rest of the freedom. So as I was saying earlier, you have the freedom to whatever interests you, and you just learn from what you're doing. So you have to have that freedom to want to do whatever you want. And then from that freedom, you learn based on what you decide to do. So in the case of the Martins, they don't have a bedtime. They can eat whatever they want as long as it's in the house. They do have, the only restrictions they really have is, financial restrictions on, okay, we can only spend this amount of money, but that's not a controlling thing. They can, for the most part, do whatever they want. I don't think of anything, can't think of anything that they talked about that they can't do if they want to stay over their friend's house. If they really didn't get to staying out all night outside of staying at a friend's house, but I know they said that the oldest went to a country in Europe at 15 by himself. So they're pretty much doing whatever they want to do and choosing based on the fact that they own themselves. It's their life. And what Dana Martin brings up a lot, and what I had mentioned earlier, is meeting your kids' needs. Now, there is a difference between needs and wants. So I don't know that that's put in the proper way if you say meeting your kids' needs, because your kids' needs aren't, to do they don't need to do certain things. They want to do them. I mean, of course, needs are, well, you need a place to live, you need shelter and food, but her point was, think about meeting your kids' needs before meeting yours. So there was an example where she was on Stefan Molyneux's show, and that's where you could see where they do differ in how far Stefan Molyneux goes compared to how far Dana Martin goes with radical unschooling, where it's sacrificing your needs for theirs. in a lot of cases. Not in every case, but when it comes to stopping them from doing something they want to do, to sacrifice your needs, as you did decide to have kids. And however, that doesn't mean that you have to let them do whatever they want or sacrifice all of your needs or any of your needs for that matter for them. I mean, I don't believe that you owe your kids anything besides food, shelter, clothes, things like that. So as far as owing them things more and buying them things, but I believe that you owe them their freedom to do what they want. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to buy them stuff for them to do it or give them money to do it, because I don't think that is violating their freedom if you don't give them money to go out. If you say, hey, if you can get the money to go out, you can go out. I'm not going to stop you from doing what you want to do, but I'm not going to give you the money to do it because maybe you don't have the money, or maybe you just need it for something else, or whatever the reason may be. But with the radical unschooling, it seems to take it a lot further, because there's no structure in schooling at all. It's all based on, okay, we're going to do what you want to do, and we can learn something from it or make a lesson out of it, especially when you're younger. When the kids are younger, that, hey, they want to go to the zoo, and which is a perfect place, obviously, to make a lesson out of it and learn things. So it's more learning things through your life based on what you want to do. And it's all up to the kids choosing what they want to do and enjoying their life and enjoying their childhood and being happy. And I know her oldest son is a blacksmith. I mentioned this before. He something else as well that he learned. So they're able to take the initiative to do what they want, to learn what they want. They're not bogged down by a lot of the things that you learn in school that may be pointless, or going through classes that, you know, they're not really going to do anything for you, and it's just, you know, to fill up space, or busy work that you're given in school just to keep you busy. So there's all of those things that factor into it as well. Now, with peaceful parenting, I see it more as, and with Stefan Molyneux, he definitely said that he would unschool. I mean, his daughter, I think, is 4 or 5, that he would, or not unschool, but homeschool his daughter. I don't know to what extent, whether it's structured or not. And that's the whole thing between the unschooling and the homeschooling, is the structure. But you can be homeschooled and your parents could still be totally authoritarians. They could punish you. They could not give you the freedom to go out. So homeschooling isn't necessarily directly related to freedom. And especially in the cases, I mean, you have a lot of religious groups that homeschool. So I think it's a positive thing to homeschool, but there are people that don't use it as a way to give their kids more freedom. They just use it as a way. A lot of them use it more as a way of control, because they want to control what their kid is learning, and they may want them to just learn what's in the Bible, and they don't want them to learn some of the things that schools are teaching. And that's totally different than the type of homeschooling that we're talking about. But you do have that as well, where, you know, they're putting together a religious curriculum and teaching, you know, cutting out things like evolution or anything that violates their religious beliefs. And they have the right to do that, but that's almost the opposite. So, point being that homeschooling doesn't necessarily coincide with freedom. I think in many cases it does, because especially unschooling definitely does, because you're letting your child kind of pick what they want to do and what they're interested in. So I would think, for me personally, that, you know, somewhere between unschooling and some kind of curriculum would be the way to go. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But so the main thing, I think, is that radical unschooling, there's just more freedom in general. It's just where it seems like with peaceful parenting, yes, they have freedom, and they try, as Stefan Molyneux said, try not to impose their will upon their children, although he said it's wrong. But it sounds like he has done it before, that he's been in situations where he felt like he didn't have another option, or maybe he did and he reacted in a way that he wished he didn't react in. But in the couple minutes that we have left, the main point of all this is, can one more parents adopt these styles of parenting and this type of philosophy, at least on a peaceful parenting level, and maybe not even go as far as some people are going, but to go in that direction instead of I have to ask permission to do anything. I'm controlled by my parents. I'm owned by my parents. And I didn't even choose to be here. I didn't choose my parents. I didn't choose to be born. You know, no one's thinking of this. To get rid of the mentality of I own my kids. And if that can be accomplished at a certain level, you know, a certain amount of parents, and which would still have to be, you know, a huge percentage of the population, will those kids help to push that on, as well as push the ideas of freedom as well, and help the next generation go and push government out, at least to having less government, or push government out totally, as opposed to the indoctrination that's taking place at government schools and the country continuing to go the other direction in a more controlling, spying on everybody, the government being involved in every aspect of your life. So I can't emphasize the importance of this enough. I really can. I think it's one of the most important things that can be done. But it's a matter of parents adopting those ideas And kids, when they grow up, continuing with those ideas of freedom, which I think kids that grow up that way, I can't see how they wouldn't believe in freedom when they grew up having at least a certain amount of it, whatever their parents could give them. You know, of course, again, the government still tries to step in certain situations, and who knows what the government's going to try to do in the future regarding homeschooling, where certain states may try to stop it. I know Ohio had a bill that they wanted, I forget the specifics, but it was where you had to do a lot more to actually homeschool your kid. I'm thinking it was a ban unless you had like a specific type of reason, but it got thrown out of the legislature and nothing ever happened. So I hope to see increases in homeschooling and increases in peaceful parenting and increases in radical unschooling, and to spread these ideas of freedom to kids, because that's really who needs to know them. And they're not getting them in school, and they're not getting them in government media, and they're just being brainwashed and indoctrinated. So I hope that more people, by listening to, because not a lot of people are listening to me, but by listening to Stefan Molyneux and finding Dana Martin videos, and she was on different shows and things like that, and coming across them, and even coming across my show, hopefully, that people will be open to things like this and start to change their style of parenting and definitely getting their kids out of government schools. But that's all we have for tonight. We will be back tomorrow with guest host Katie Reyes, where we'll be talking all about our childhood and our experience with parenting, as well as our thoughts on future kids and our philosophy on parenting if we were to have kids. So thanks everybody for listening. Please check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com and check us out on Spreaker, where you can listen to any of the shows we've ever done. So thanks everybody. Have a good night.
With the police officer, the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.